Good afternoon. This is the Devar Torah, Parashat Beha'aloscha. It's the third Parsha in Sefer the Bamidbar. Beha'aloscha is a very uh, in-depth Parsha. It has a lot in it. And uh, before I go into the details of the Parsha briefly, the outline is it starts on positivity. Aaron was disappointed that he didn't get to give one of the gifts. But his job of lighting them and his descendants of lighting the menorah had far more significance and was going to go continue. And in fact, it uh, evolved in Hanukkah later on. It was 8 lights. That's a whole separate discussion. In any event, after that and redemption of Levium, the Parsha records one protest or avera against Hashem with the one break with the two pasukim with the inverted nuns, which is a discussion and a whole interesting discussion in itself, which I've spoken about in previous to Torah. In any event, it starts with it says it's talking about you shall when you elevate the lamps the menorah, you shall illuminate them. You shall 7 lamps shall illuminate the menorah. Now this is it then goes on, which I'll be speaking about in detail, then talks about the redemption of the Levium in place of the first one. And it goes into the rules of what's going to happen. They then talk about Pesach Sheni because some people were carrying the the coffin of Yosef and his brothers, and that Matame made them impure, and they were the Pesach Sheni, which were proclaimed by Hashem 1 month later. And it goes into a whole way of how when the flame of fire at night or the cloud of glory in the day were on the Mishkan, they stayed. Anytime they rose, it rose. The people broke camp and went. It then discusses the making of trumpets, the signal, different parts of the people, and it then goes into a whole discussion of how the first march went. Yithro then appears. Yithro then appears, and Moshe asks them to go and to stay with them, and they do. Eventually, Yithro and his descendants settled in Jericho, and at that time there was a famous two inverted nuns and two pasukim, some of whom people say divided the Sefer Devarim into three, so there's 7 books of the Torah. Then the protests began. They complained that they didn't have food to eat like they had in Egypt. All they had was the man, which is a perfect miraculous food. Uh, then Moshe says, I can't handle this people. They're close to stoning him over the food. God says, assemble 70 of the elders. He's going to take a bit of Moshe's prophecy and spread it to them to help guide him. And then he says, how are you going to feed 600,000 people meat? Hashem assembles the quail, and they got punished for wanting to do that. And the Parsha finishes with Moshe and Aaron speaking against Moshe, that they were with their respective husband and wife and husband. Yet Moshe could not be with Zipporah the last 40 years of his life. And Hashem punished, explained why, because prophecy could come to him at any time. And so Miriam suffered saras, and after a week, the camp waited. She was healed. Even though she did nothing wrong, she was doing it for Toela's purpose. It wasn't Lashon Hara. It was a warning to the Jewish people, which did not keep on Parshas Shlach. They unfortunately did not keep it. Now, what I'd like to emphasize is the positive beginning of the Parsha. And when it says, and the first pasuk says, Be'er shel Moshe lemor, Be'er Aaron amra, Hilav be'lecha et neirot el mol pnei menorah, and she'll rise on the menorah, and shall the seven lights cast light. And Aaron did so. He faced the menorah and says, Aliyah nerasa kasher tzivah Hashem. The Moshe, that Aaron did so towards the face of the menorah. He raised its lamps. Now, little sense, you can say raising his lamps was talking very simply about every night they had to replace the lamps, candles in the menorah, the oil. That's on one level. However, there is far more depth. There is very much to say, but I just want to give a few points on it. I will eventually be doing a share on it where we'll go into it in far much more elaborate detail. This is based on the Or Chaim, who I'll start with, and it's also based on the writings of the Arya Kodesh and the Zohar. And why does it talk about raised lamps? It could have easily said to light the lamps. That's normal wording. Says Aaron lit the menorah only in the evening and not the day. Now, the western lamp, when it burned out, the Vasher was Mano Yered Hashem Shahel B'chor Ner L'Mararava. The day took place only when Hashem's people were in spiritual decline. It was only then that that candle burned out. This is not occurring in the time of Aaron, the time of Mishkan, but it has a number of other meanings. And another point, it's also reminding us, known to make Aaron's praise, ki ishisha Aaron lo asu l'sad ma'ala b'kavod asher yamini Hashem, that teaches that this is the Or Chaim, informed mitzvah not only for the purpose of the elevated side on which Hashem gave him, but the command of Hashem's purposes. And this is the real reason it was done. Now, we there's many meanings of the seven lights. Just to give one or two of them, in the Or Chaim, when it said the western lamp, a single lamp on one side, a middle lamp, and a single on the side. Why do they have the seven lamps? He needed seven lamps to show the presence of the Shekhinah. Had to be perfect because the seven lamp candelabra is the most beautiful. Another is it alludes to the nations of the world, which amount to 70 nations. Each one represented 10. And where did their flames get pointed to? They all get pointed to the middle, to the west, which is Israel. And what's that alluding to? That the lamps of the nations will go out. We're starting to see that process now. And what is our light saying? Why we light in the dark is that Mashiach lights now will be extinguished, and only one will be the light of Israel, and will glow brighter and brighter, as explained in Mishlei. But it's also explaining that the illumination of lamps is all for the Bnei Israel. And that's on one level. Now, on another level, it has even more meanings. Of understanding the menorah. It says when you raise up the lamps, the lech means to raise up, or you cause to ascend. Now, what's ascending? It has a number of different levels, of which I'm only going to focus on a few. But one of them, we don't say adlik, we say to ascend. In other words, he instructed to hold the flame to the wick till it rose on its own. What does that mean? Another level. First of all, it's talking about the human neshama. That's one level. And in the human neshama, what's it teaching us? Is that a Rav, a teacher, Rebinson, that not to be dependent on external aspiration means the spark must come from that person. Now, a second meaning is it's talking about 7 different lamps. Now, we talked about the 70 nations. It means that on one level, but what's also brought is that the seven they have these 7 candles, 7 lamps. One represents the 7 emotional spheres, which originally were, when they were originally being created, they broke the shattering of the kalim, and then everything had to be done tikkun, had to be repaired, fixed, made better. And what do these 7 menorah lamps represent? One is chesed, loving kindness, gevura, which means strength, the ferret's beauty, netzach is victory, hod is splendor, yesod is foundation, and malchut is kingship. Now, if these all sound familiar, they are, because these were all used were things we were saying for the 7 weeks of Sferis Omer. And it helps elevate people. Shows these qualities talking to humans. They must moderate each other. So what do they have to do? They eventually have to become spiritual unity with Hashem. That's one. Another meaning of it is it talks about the seven emotional spheres. The 6 outer lamps must face towards the 7th. So we're all aligned, and the physical world, our world, is the lowest of the, it represents darkness. But what does Baha'alotcha mean? We represent Aliyah, ascent. If you perform a physical act with a spiritual sense, it will rise up, and then it will and sparks of holiness will be raised. That's another meaning. Now, that was based on the Zohar largely. Now the Arizal talks on a deeper level. What are you doing? You're raising. We're elevating divine sparks. And what happens, and from these sparks come the different higher spiritual universes, worlds. Now, Hashem wants to send us light down, but he'll only do that. He could do it without this, but the mechanism he uses is by Aaron's, for example, raising the flames, which represents us. So it's elevating the mind of Vukim, female waters, which are mitzvahs, prayers, and what comes, you have the mind of Vukim, masculine waters bring down, flood of divine light, and it raises them. And final version of what this means, if you look at the way they're divided, the left branches menorah represent Gevurah, judgment, severity, while the 3 right branches represent Chesed. And what is the ferret? That's the central balancing scale. And they must merge. In other words, through this, the harsh judgments will be sweetened by the Chesed. And by doing that, we are doing that again. It will raise up. It will help bring tikkunim to the universe, repairs, which ultimately are going to lead to the final redemption. May we see it soon in our day. And I'd like to wish everybody a good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom. in good summer, which is coming out and rest of spring, and that we should truly learn the lessons represented in this parsha, particularly the beginning, and avoid the mistakes of the rest of most of the parsha, so that we truly merit the redemption this year.